Today in the time of God is a little bit about doing things wrong and how it came to be that we need to even have a Maker Faire. Like the first Maker Faire, where Da Vinci was there and Rembrandt was there, and all those guys in the Renaissance were hanging out and talking about new ways they could sculpt in marble. I think it's absurd to imagine that they have a Maker Faire, right? Something happened to our culture, and it's something that I think happened on purpose. And I want to highlight it for you and get it under your skin, because maybe as you look at the outside world, you'll notice this, and it will change what you see. Lego, which we all grew up with, is something that's built on a few principles. And one of their core principles was, I'm using the past tense, that every bit of Lego has to be used in multiple ways. The difference between Lego and a car model kit was that you could use your imagination and build things with Lego that were absurd and wrong and didn't work and fell over. But every piece of Lego does something else. Well, based on the rules of Lego, Lego was going to go bankrupt. Lego was a year or two away from completely going under because not enough kids were buying Lego. And new management came in, and they cut costs, sure, but mostly what they did was they invented Lego kits. Now, if you've got younger kids, you know what I'm talking about. A Lego kit can only be used in one way. You can build a Star Wars creature, and that's it. And then you can go on to the next Lego kit. What we did was we built a culture about doing things right, about getting a car where we don't need to change the oil, where we don't want to change the oil, where we are unable to change the oil. And so as Mark Brownsfelder has said, this notion of no user serviceable parts inside is something we all live with now. Where did it come from? Where did this notion that what we as human beings have to do is make kits and follow instructions and practice to work for the man making the things that we all do? And where it came from is industrialists. Industrialists built our economy as we use it now. Industrialists made us all rich. Industrialists gave us air conditioning and cars and traffic that doesn't rip and the ability to go to the corner store and buy something for 99 cents that would have cost $100,000 50 years ago. The industrial system has not a lot to do with capitalism and everything to do with polishing the edges, improving productivity, and making sure things work. And what industrialists do is they take something that's working a little and they make it work a lot. And they take something that's going fast and they make it go faster. And they take something that's smooth and they make it smooth. So if you look at an industrial baseball stadium 5 miles from here or a mile from here, it's fundamentally different than what it was to go to a baseball game 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Because we have gotten really efficient at making these things. And as a result, we've given industrialists a lot of power and a lot of authority, and they have taken it and they have built it deep into what we believe and how we run our lives. They've built it, for example, into school. Public school, is an industrial system. It was only invented in the 1860s and 70s in Massachusetts. It was called the common school because the common people were going to learn how to do something. And the place where the teachers went to learn was called the normal school, because they were going to teach you how to make kids normal. And the reason we wanted to send kids to school was not to make them educated, but to get them ready to work in a factory. Because it's not natural to go someplace and spend 10 or 11 or 12 hours in a row doing what you're told over and over again. Does that sound like school? Because that's what school is. And we process people in batches. And if you're defective, we put you back a year and process you again. And we give you a number 2 pencil and have you fill in the circles just right. And we don't challenge you to challenge the system. We challenge you to understand what will be on the test. And we create this culture where people take good notes so they can say it back to us. Where we memorize stuff. Right? Where it's very important to go to a famous college, even though there is no data whatsoever, that famous colleges perform any of the tasks we would think we want a college to do better than unfamous colleges do. And yet it's built into our culture now that every parent who cares apparently is supposed to care that their kid went to school where the sticker on the back window actually means something. So back to what makes it a maker and back to what makes something science. If you sit in a science lab in a high school class, you will not see any students doing science. What you will see them doing is following instructions to demonstrate that they know how to go through the steps of doing science that someone else did 40 years ago or 400 years ago. And if they try to innovate, if they try to be a maker, if they try to understand and see what doesn't work, they get marked down. And then if they get marked down enough, they have to be reprocessed and do it again. And if we think about what we ask people to do when we pretend that we are challenging them to be creative, we're not challenging them to be creative at all. We're challenging them to look like the person who came before them. Rembrandt had assistants, but we don't know who those people were, because all they were good at was doing what Rembrandt told them to do. And what we define art as is something fundamentally different. Art, the kind of art that we admire, that we wait in line for, the kind of art we fly across the country to eat at a special restaurant for, the kind of art that we remember someone wrote a book about, or painted something with, or created a new kind of customer service. That kind of art has never been done before. It's innovation. It's new. Marcel Duchamp was a Dadaist artist. He was the first person to put a urinal into an art exhibit. The second person to put in a urinal wasn't an artist, he was a plumber. And that's the big distinction. And then what real makers understand is this. If it might not work, then you're doing some making. If you were doing something that might not work, not this better work, but it might not work, then you are doing something important because it is risky. It is risky because when you finish, you need to turn to someone and say, here it is, I made this. And the other person can say, I don't like it. The other person can say, it doesn't work right. The other person can say, I don't want it. That is hard. The reason that we are afraid of public speaking is not because it's dangerous. The reason we are afraid of public speaking is if you stand up and say what you want to say, someone can turn to you and say, no, you are wrong. And that's why it's worth doing. The guy who invented the ship also invented the shipwreck. It's really hard about what we're teaching our kids and what we're saying to ourselves about the work we're doing. If you say to yourself, yeah, innovation is great, but this is so important, failure is not an option, then what you've also said is neither is success. Because all hacking is, all innovation is, all creating is, all science is doing things over and over and over again, failing and failing and failing until it works. And so if you're not willing to fail, then you cannot possibly innovate. So as I'm walking around the Maker Faire and I'm seeing people waiting in line, what are they waiting in line for? They're waiting in line for food like they had yesterday, and they're waiting in line to buy kits with pictures on the cover about what will be built when they follow the instructions that are inside. It's not because these people are bad people, it's because we have been brainwashed from the age of 3 to say, well, that's what we are supposed to do. That's what will make us happy. We want something that works. And so when a kid comes along and starts hacking an Arduino box and you say, what are you making? He says, I don't know yet. We feel a little uncomfortable about that. Because that's not junior industrial behavior. That's an insurgent at work. Well, maybe you're going to break something. And the idea of breaking things is where we are now because there's a fork in the road. And the fork in the road is this. We can go on the left fork, and the left fork is a race to the bottom. And the problem with the race to the bottom is you might win. And it's a race to be faster and cheaper and more compliant. It's a race to say, you know that factory you moved over there because those people want cheaper? Come back and we'll work even cheaper than that. And it's a race to say, you know that innovation we like over here? This is just like that innovation, except we changed it up so we won't get sued. But it's sort of the same, right? It's a race that says, you know how you fall in love with overnight shipping? Well, this is 11-hour shipping. One little bit faster. This is the safe industrialist path. It's the one that makes you blameless. It's the one when you stand up at a school board meeting and say, we want what we've got now, but we want it 3% better and 4% cheaper, no one's going to criticize it. And then there's this other path, and the other path has nothing to do with that. The other path says, we built this foundation, this industrial foundation. It made us all have phones in our hands that are smarter than any computer ever available in 1970. Right? It's this revolution that made us be able to travel across the world without worrying about the plane crashing. It's the revolution that says typical diseases that killed most people on the earth 200 years ago are all gone. All right, we did that. Now what are we going to do? What do we build it for? Do we build it so we can figure out how to make stuff at Home Depot 1% cheaper? Because we can't make it much cheaper than we've made it. I think what we've got now is this opportunity to say everybody who has a connection to the internet has something unbelievable in their hands. The ability to touch people who want to be touched. The ability to connect to people who want to be connected. The connection economy is the biggest thing that happens with the Industrial Revolution. And so we don't have to get better at being industrialists. We have to figure out how to get better at being connected. And the only people we want to connect with are people who are doing something interesting, who are doing something new, and therefore who are doing something frightening. Not hiding from it, but standing up and saying, I made this, what do you think? And how can I do it better, or different, or in a new way? There's a real book, I'm not making this up, called Farmville for Dummies. Step-by-step instructions on how to grow invisible sheep. Why do we live in a place where people want to buy this book? What will happen if you raise the sheep wrong? So they come to your house and say, you blew it, we're taking the sheep away. It used to be a matter of life and death. On a lot of places on this earth, it still is a matter of life or death. In a lot of places on this earth, if you lose $3 or $4 by making a mistake, someone in your family isn't going to eat. Right? No one in this group has that problem. No one who's watching this on the internet has that problem. The problem we have isn't how we repeat ourselves today or tomorrow. The problem we have is how do we become more human? And how do we turn that humanity into something that's actually worth doing again and again and again? Not so we can invent the next wave of industrialization, because I don't think there is one, but so that we can invent this new way of being in the world. Sometimes that's we have to drink water. Now I want to explain to you why some of you are getting this, but don't want to do anything about it, and some of you are really afraid to get this because it's making you antsy. Daniel Ellsberg, famous for something else, in 1962 became famous for the first time when he coined the Ellsberg paradox. And I need you to be empathetic here because this isn't going to be appropriate for everyone in this room, but imagine all the other people in your life being asked this question. Here is a bucket, and in this bucket are 100 balls. 50 brown, 50 black. Got it? 100 balls, 50 brown, 50 black. In this bucket, also 100 balls. Some are brown, some are black. There's 100 brown and black put together, but we don't know if one black, 99 brown, 99 black, one brown. You get the idea? Random collection. Now, I'm going to give $1,000 to anybody who blindfolded comes up and picks a black ball. Here's the question. Do you want to pick from the 50-50 bucket for your chance to win $1,000 if it's a black one? Or do you want to pick from the random assortment bucket if it's a chance to pick the black one? How many want to pick the 50-50? Raise your hand. How many imagine their parents or their in-laws or their friends would rather pick from the 50 bucket? Raise your hand. And what about from the random assortment bucket? Raise your hand. Well, it turns out if you do the math, it's exactly the same. But when Ellsberg did the study, almost everybody picks the 50-50 bucket. And the reason is, because we say to ourselves, with my luck, that one will only have one black ball in it. Whereas here, at least I know my odds. The Ellsberg paradox points to this key, underlying, prehistoric thing that's going on in our brain. Wild animals are wild because their brains make them wild. And their brains are hardwired for revenge, safety, reproduction, and safety. Right? Like dodgeball, two S's for safety. The thing is, if you're not wired for that, you're not going to make it very long as a wild animal, and you're not going to have kids, and they're not going to be wired for that either. Human beings have that same brain. It's right back here. It's called our amygdala. It's next to the brainstem, the shortest path you can for running away. And that's the part of your brain that when you're on an airplane typing a memo and you hit turbulence, pulls the laptop away so we can use all of our force of will to keep the plane along. Lucky for them, who were on the plane to keep it along. If they home, that would have been the end of it. The lizard brain, which is what psychologists call it, the lizard brain is hardwired to step in moments when self-preservation is in effect. So if you're at a baseball game and a bat comes flying into the stands, you're going to go like this instantly. You're not going to have a whole conversation with yourself about the odds, the bat's going to hit you, what the arc is. You just do it, right? Well, the lizard brain isn't helping us lately. And the reason it's not helping us is that when you got addicted to your BlackBerry, like the first time you had a BlackBerry, you looked at it and said, oh good, everything's okay. And you put it back in your pocket. And then 15 minutes later, the list goes, I wonder if everything's still okay. And the next thing you know, you're like this all day long, checking to make sure everything's okay. And it's that reflex of worrying when you see your boss's phone number on the caller ID, and worrying when you get called into the meeting, and worrying when you're about to launch something. If we look at how long it takes Microsoft to launch new versions of products, it keeps getting longer as the product gets more successful. Because the closer you get to launching something that's that big, the more lawyers have to look at it, the more people have to worry about it, the more risk there is. And so we hold back. Well, this lizard brain is the one that persuades parents to make sure their kid goes to a famous house just in case. It's the one that gets us to play it safe when the industrialists say that if we don't, we're going to be in big trouble. And so what we have to understand is that voice in the back of your head that says, don't do this, this might not work. Don't do this, this has never been done before. Don't do this, this isn't proven. When you hear that voice, it is a lesson to you that you are on the right path, not the wrong path. But it's a compass and radar signaling when you're about to do something important. What Paul Graham, the legendary investor, has pointed out is that almost every single big innovation that comes out of Silicon Valley is something that venture capitalists didn't like. That what people in the book industry will tell you is that almost every bestseller is a surprise bestseller. Because the obvious ones don't usually work. It's the book that comes out of nowhere. The J.K. Rowling was rejected by 20, 30, 40 publishers in a row before someone takes a chance to publish her. Out of left field. Right? My book from Scholastic, I did a series of little books for them. For kids, only 3 years before the first Harry Potter, they would not let me put vampires and witches in the books because Scholastic had a policy that 12-year-olds and 9-year-olds couldn't read about vampires. Right? It was against everything they stood for, and then suddenly it's a surprise bestseller. It's the same thing that goes on in all the areas that we care about. Because in the connection economy, where all the value is being created by people who are connected to other people for a reason, we're not connecting to the boring people. We're not connecting to the safe people, and we're not connecting to the cheap people. We're connecting to people we care about who are doing work that matters. So, as I wrap up, because I would love to take your questions on this, if you have any. I think you need to ask yourself a couple questions, and then you need to ask the people around you some questions. Number one, what is school for? How can we possibly fix school if we can't agree on what it's for? Now, we can all agree that school is designed to create compliant industrial workers, then great, let's go do that. We're halfway there. On the other hand, if it's for something else, let's stop handing them textbooks about the history of something because no one ever chose to learn anything from a textbook. There's always opportunities for us to reinvent how we teach our kids and what we teach them to do. And the next question is, if you think you're a maker, what have you made recently that was a complete and epic failure? And if you're a maker and you make something and it's interesting, how dare you not share it? How dare you hide from us what you made that was interesting? Because that hiding is the work of a lizard brain. I can't put this in the world because people will make fun of me. Because then I'll be in trouble. Because then they'll realize I'm a fraud. But it's putting it into the world that enables you to connect. And it's the connecting that enables you to get better at it. So where this comes out for me is this. There has never, ever been in the history of mankind a better moment to be someone who has something to say. And that the internet was not designed so that you could watch yet another Justin Bieber video. And it wasn't built so that you could figure out one more way to check in to make sure everything's okay. That all 480 of your Facebook friends still like you. That your building where you go to work is still there. You don't need the internet to do those things. What you need it to do, what it's capable of doing, is giving you a platform for a real sort of making of connection, and making things that matter, and making a difference. I hope they do that. Thank you.